The following is a CUNY TV special presentation.
Cole was a great educator and a real city hero, and was dearly loved by everyone at CEI-PEA. I mean, truly a loved man, most generous of men, and soft and gentle gentleman, but very tough. And Cole was the kind of guy who loved kids who got into trouble. Those are the kids he knew every thug in East Harlem. And all you had to do to get into the Manhattan Center for Science and Math, there was no exam. You just had to apply. And principals would call him up and say, you know, I have a youngster with potential. They would never tell him what the potential was. But Cole would always say, send him over and take him in. And we recruited 157 youngsters. By the way, at Hunter College, I want you to know Hunter College played a big role in what happened at Manhattan Center, because 157 kids showed up. If 162 kids showed up, we would have had 162 kids. But we started at a college, because in our ignorance, we figured we should get kids to go to college. The last time I had been to college is to high school is when I went there. Fortunately, we didn't know much about it, and that was a tremendous advantage. 4 years later, front page of the New York Times, every youngster graduated. Every youngster went to college. That was Colman Genn, a truly great man. Then he went on to become a superintendent. And he was in a district in Queens, and the board members told him, you know, if you cooperate with us, you can be the superintendent for your entire life. Just pay attention to what we tell you to do. And they said, you know, we noticed you've made 2 mistakes already. You hired 2 Afro-American men to be principals in our schools. Those were the first 2 African-American principals in that district. But if you play ball, you can do very well here. He carried a wire for the commission, got that board indicted and removed, and changed the life of the children in that district. So Cole Genn, in addition to be a great educator, was a major city hero. So I just thought we should share that with you, because if you didn't know him, you say, so who's Cole Genn? And why do we have Matthew Goldstein here? He's a busy guy. Now, Cole would be very happy, because he knew Matt, to know that he is receiving the first award, by the way. Cole died 9 years ago. We've had Cole Genn meetings and lectures, but this is the first award. And we are all so pleased that it's for Matt Goldstein. In addition, I've always called you a New York City hero. So it's the most appropriate matchup, Colman Genn and Matt Goldstein. And I want you to know a lot of people feel that way. So you must have a lot of plaques in your home and trophies. So we thought it would be better that we give you a piece of art done by a youngster. And that's this piece of art here. So for me, it's an honor to present the art and the honoree, Matt Goldstein.
Thank you, Cy. I'm truly humbled and honored to receive this beautiful piece of artwork. I can't believe it's from a youngster who has never had any formal training, and I will cherish it. My wife Maggie is here. She will move it around 9 times as an architect, but I will accept this award on behalf of all of the people at the City University who have helped this university change its topology. And by that I mean our board chair, Benno Schmidt, who I think is one of the most inspired chairs of a board in the United States, a very distinguished academician himself, all of the other board members who have been enormously supportive, and a number of them are here this afternoon. Without the board's support, you really can't get things done. The ideas oftentimes came from me, but the board really had to be there to support it. And every single instance, they were there to support the establishment of new schools and new colleges, changing standards, accountability, all of the things that make a university strong, hiring lots of faculty, which will continue. I also accept this award on behalf of the people who worked with me in the central administration. Nobody is more blessed than I am to have people of their stature, their focus, their humility, their intelligence, their tenacity. The presidents, most of whom I recommended for appointment, I think are some of the finest women and men that we have in these very difficult jobs. The faculty who work with us very closely to get things done. So this is not an award for me. It is an award for a group of people that have worked with me, that have brought this university to where we are today. So I thank all of them that are here, and others that are not here. I thank them as well. I'd like to discuss with you briefly today some things that I believe very strongly in. Some you haven't heard me say before. Some are a little edgy. So let me begin, and I'm not going to go into great depth, but these are things that I suggested that we discuss. These are things that I've been thinking about for a while. These are things that I think need attention by presidents and chancellors and all other decision makers, policy people, members of government, both elected and appointed officials, having to do with higher education. One of the surprising things that some of you will hear is that we conducted a survey among business leaders, technologists, people in media, the military, and I'm very proud of having David Petraeus at our university. I worked hard to get him, and I think he's going to be an extraordinary person for the university. Certainly members of government and academicians. We asked them certain questions about higher education, and especially the American Research University, which CUNY is an American research university among many other things that it does. What is it that is a commonality that very many people have? And the commonality is that the American Research University, which continues to be critical to the nation's health and prosperity, is under fire to the point of crisis. Furthermore, if the major public research universities do not recover their footing and support, their decline will be inevitable, and the result, I submit, will be catastrophic. The threats to their continuing success come from both within the systems and outside the systems looking in. One of the themes is that higher education today is too expensive and it's too inefficient. And it's not a good investment, many people believe. As Arthur Levine, a good friend of mine, president of the Woodrow Wilson Foundation and former president of Teachers College, put it in an op-ed piece recently. He said, public and opinion leaders alike view universities as more of a problem than a solution. Now, you're not going to hear this from leaders in higher education, but there's a lot of wisdom there, and I think we should never be afraid of criticism. Listen carefully to the critics if they are thoughtful people, and execute and do something about it. Tuition is getting too high at many places. I would submit at CUNY that is not the case at all, but across the spectrum of both public and private education, higher education, it is too high. State and local governments are pulling away from supporting both public and private universities, and they have been pulling away for a good 2 decades. Research money is drying up in a lot of fields, and one will submit that many of our students today are not being trained for the jobs that people in commerce and industry want them to have. Those are serious indictments, and I think ones that we need to take very seriously. You know, if you go back to the Morrill Act of the 1860s, when Abraham Lincoln ceded lots of land across these United States to the establishment of state universities, and said to the states, I'll give you, we, the Congress and the executive, will give you this land, but you be responsible for supporting these universities. And they did a wonderful, wonderful job across, today, our state universities educate about 82% of the students that study in the United States in higher education. But there are deep and foreboding events that are happening that give all of us pause whether we will be smart enough to know that investing in these institutions is a sine qua non for a healthy and vibrant society. And there are times that I believe that wisdom is just not there. You've heard me say this before. The University of Michigan, which is one of our great public universities, now only gets 6 cents on the dollar for their operating needs from the state of Michigan. The University of California at Berkeley in 2003 got 50 cents on the dollar for operations. In 2011, that number went from 50% to 10%. And that is across the United States. The shift from state and local support has been placed on the shoulders of students. And I don't think that that is a very good result because so many of our students are incurring huge debt that they can't retire. And many students are now not even contemplating going to a public university because the price tag has gotten to be so high. The federal government has been a partner in higher education really since World War II. And huge amounts of money were put into higher education with the establishment of the National Institutes of Health and all of the companion organizations, the National Science Foundation, other organizations that have fed research dollars. And when you think about what that has accomplished, not only in the United States, but across the world, you can map back that investment to the investment that has been made in research. And those dollars are drying up as well. Money is tight everywhere. We understand that. But there's also a lack of consensus that higher education is a public good. Just think about that for a moment. Higher education, unfortunately, and we are as guilty as everybody else, has not come out with an effective way of explaining its costs, defining the appropriate role of government and private investment in research, or perhaps more importantly, articulating the relevance of basic research, its potential long-term payback, and its service to the national interest. It's something that we need to work on because we cannot allow the derivative, the slope of support of these institutions to continue on a downward trajectory for too long, because I believe it's going to result in the incapacity of the United States to really compete in a global world of higher education that didn't exist right after World War II. Europe was decimated. The Far East was in its infancy with respect to supporting higher education. It's changed dramatically. And it's going to require new ways of thinking, new and bold ways of thinking, and it's going to require that we, as trustees and others who are put in the public trust, to start thinking about what we need in leaders. And we need courage, among many other things, to stand up and say, this is just not right, and lay out the reasons why these institutions need to be supportive. We have seen that higher education, and I think CUNY, I would say, has been a leader in this, looking at opportunities to experiment, and I apologize for the mathematical statement here, but it's something I can't avoid. It's in my DNA. More opportunities to experiment in non-canonical academic structures and organizations, and funding mechanisms that could accelerate these kinds of changes in higher education. So much of what we experience today, the interesting questions, the hard questions, are on the boundaries of disciplines. You know, when I grew up, and all of us, many of us in this room, we lived in silos in higher education. Very few of us really created channels between disciplines. Today, the world is totally different. It is about the very important questions really mapped onto the boundaries of disciplines that we have to do, and that is going to be an assault, if you will, on governance of a university. And I would submit, and I think many of my colleagues across the United States will agree, that governance is a serious issue that we have to face in the higher education communities in order for us to succeed in what it is that we are capable of doing. And my question would be, can significant movement occur without rethinking this notion of shared governance, whereby trustees and presidents share with faculty on decisions, on some very fundamental decisions like curricula, like hiring, like awarding of tenure, all of the very, very important aspects of higher education governance today. In the opinion of some, this form of governance has been a great obstacle to progress, creating substantial status quo biases among faculty and many administrators. In addition, the shared governance system, and I want to go on record to say I support shared governance. It is a cherished principle in higher education. But we have to understand it, and we have to be bold about executing on shared governance. Many will say that, and I think there's a lot of truth to this, that the shared governance system was purposely designed to slow decision-making. It now is a handicap, oftentimes impeding a university's ability to make decisions in a timely manner. Opportunities, threats, technology, fiscal crises, new government regulations all require a nimbleness in decision-making that the current governance system just does not allow. These days, things are happening so rapidly that not to make decisions quickly is, in effect, to make no decision at all. So when I look at higher education today, I see a shared governance system which in principle is so basic to our fabric of leading a university, seriously flawed and in need of a reformation. Other ideas that I think we need to embrace and get our hands around is the notion of global competition in higher education. If you have traveled the Far East, and I have many times, and have seen the growth of higher education institutions, not only in China, but in Korea, it is absolutely remarkable. If you see what is going on in Eastern Europe, in Latin America, and in Western Europe, so many of these countries are making huge investments in higher education. We are doing just the reverse, I would submit, and it is a very, very slippery slope to go down. And I think one of the really foolish things that we do today in this country is not address the whole immigration reform question. Do you know that if you visit some of the top laboratories in the United States, and I'm talking the top universities in the United States, and look who is working in those laboratories, you will find very few American students. In the United States, only 15% of permanent resident visas are granted on the basis of skills and employment, compared to 45% in the UK, 67% in Canada, and 69% in Australia. What we are doing is taking our seed corn and tossing it out the window. We're paying for these students. We're making huge investments. And then we're saying you can't stay here and contribute to the liveliness of the economic growth and vitality of these United States. Immigration reform efforts must be addressed, and they go beyond bestowing work permits or green cards. How do we retain these students? and how do we educate them so that we can benefit from their talents. And let me just end with another thing that is going to be a very disruptive event in the history of higher education. We are about, and I'm writing a book on this, and I hope to get this done by next summer. And that is the explosiveness of the delivery of content through various platforms of digital technology. I promise you, this is going to transform higher education. Some of the great universities today are testing various modalities of how to do this. Quite frankly, we know how to pay for it. We know how to invest in it. We know how to build these platforms. We are understanding much more about cognition and learning than we ever did. We are in the infancy of a revolution that is going to happen in higher education. The irony is that lower ed is way ahead of higher ed in this. Now here's the problem. Let me give you an example through CUNY. We spend a lot more per student in the very advanced classes than we do in the beginning classes. You know, we put a lot of students in these beginning classes, and then if you're a physics major or a math major, you'll have 3 or 5 students in a class. And provosts and deans often cancel these classes because of fiscal stress on the system and saying, we cannot offer the class this year because we can't afford it to do it. We don't have the money to do it. It doesn't make sense to pay a full-time professor to teach 3 or 4 or 5 students in a class. We know how to solve that problem. What we don't know how to do is the governance associated with this revolution. And there is a subtext to the book that I am writing, and that subtext is the future wars in higher education. And those wars are going to come about because faculty and others are going to be threatened by some of this. Some of them will map the advent of using these technologies onto a space that says our jobs are going to be compromised, if not eliminated. We have so many students in major public universities today that don't graduate in time for a lot of reasons. Poverty, they have to work, they have obligations at home. But one of the things that we know to be true is that there aren't enough courses at an advanced level for these students to take because it is viewed by people who worry about these matters as not the proper way to allocate resources. Technology, through all of the buzzwords, call them MOOCs or hybrid learning or totally online education, is going to be a mechanism where we are going to be able to place in balance, where we never have been able to place in balance before, the legitimate needs of students to get in, get their degrees, and go out into the marketplace. But it's going to be a battle. And we as educators, both presidents and deans and provosts and faculty, are going to have to find a way to deal with the inevitable consequences, and that's why I use the word disruptiveness. This is going to be a disruptive technology in a good way, in a very good way, but has consequences in ways that people are going to be threatened. So when I look ahead and place a lens on the future of higher education, and I'm not the only one saying this, and we're going to discuss this tomorrow, how do we engage our community to say this is not something that we need to fear, this is something that we need to work on together as a community, because at the end of the day, while there may be a big capital investment in the beginning, and I want to underscore that, if this is done the way I think it will be able to get done, that curve will drop down pretty quickly, and we will be able to, absent big tuition increases, absent state support, be able, by more efficient delivery of information in a non-dilutive way, we will be able to attack some of the problems that continue to plague us today. So these are some of the edgy things I thought I would bring up today. It's nice to be able to do edgy things without people blocking your doorway when you come home at night. So one day you'll be there. Thank you very much for the award, and I appreciate it.